A lot of people think they want money and salary, but it's the recognition people want. A lot of people aren't getting the validation from home. Maybe they didn't get it from their parents for whatever reason. I found that building businesses since 2010, and especially when you look at direct sales and network marketing, why they're so successful is the recognition.
Hello everyone, welcome to In Conversation. I'm Anand, and today we are exploring the Gen Z effect, preparing today's leaders to inspire and retain tomorrow's workforce. Joining me is Aiden O'Brien, globally respected strategic advisor and mentor who has helped leaders across 5 continents sharpen performance and align with culture with action. Aiden, great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Anand. Great to be here.
I believe you have worked across 5 continents and you've been training C-suite executives and you've been working with a lot of leaders. Yeah. So just to start with, to give a perspective about what Gen Z really is, can you please give me a little bit about what Gen Z workforce right now is? What are the values?
Well, again, I work with mostly the senior management or the founders and the leaders, but definitely you hear in the marketplace, some of the challenges, around the hiring, the new generation, their version of what work and career should be, and maybe then the senior management or the owners, the founders, their version. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic today, I think. I think we're at that stage where there's such different cultures and different standards and different opportunities that there's a lot of confusion and chaos between the workforce, the leadership, where we're going and how do we get there. So I think it's a very interesting topic. So it was really great that we get to have a chat today and talk about it, But definitely from the leadership side is where I see it mostly.
I have particularly seen this challenge amongst today's leaders that they find it a bit difficult to retain the Gen Z workforce. What sort of mindset change today's leaders should adopt so that they can retain the Gen Z workforce?
I think it's both sides. I think the workforce also needs a shift in mindset, because it's one thing, the leadership starts at the top. They have to create a good culture. Even if it's not Gen Z, to get the right workforce, to get the right people, to make the right hires, to create a culture where people want to stay. It's not even about Gen Z in that case from the leadership perspective. It starts with them. So again, a good leader will have a big vision for the company. They have to have a big vision. Why are they doing it? What's so important? What are we accomplishing? Who are we serving? And I think what most people want from their leadership is they want to have a vision so big that their vision can fit inside of it. And what does that mean? That means that when you lead a company, when you're a founder or you're the senior leadership, you have to create a culture that people know there's a big opportunity, that we're creating a big impact, that we're moving the needle, and that I can build my dream inside of this company's dream. I can build my vision inside the company's vision. That's so important. And that's the same if it's Gen Z or millennial or X or whoever, you know what I mean? So the most important thing is leadership having a great vision of who they are, what's their identity as a company, where they're going, and then anybody will buy into that then. Doesn't matter what age group or what demographic, we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, that's what the big empires or say the big companies, they are based on strong cultural foundation.
Absolutely, and strong vision, a big movement. What Apple do with, the vision of who they wanted to be. Really a company's job is to make the customer feel a certain way, make the client feel a certain way. And if that's very clear and that's, it's communicated effectively, the staff can touch and taste and feel that, and they want to be part of that movement.
What do you have to say? Like, suppose if a company, they have a particular set of culture and their working style. So how can they effectively communicate it with their Gen Z workforce?
Yeah.
So, because it becomes difficult to convey that culture with them.
Well, on that piece particularly, I think people have to take responsibility. The challenge today with really the younger generations, Gen Z, you might say, is they're so used to instant gratification from social media. Like when I was growing up, you didn't have that instant gratification. You had to work and commit and deliver on something before you got. Whereas now there's literally, through social media, even through Snapchat with their friends, there's instant gratification. Like if they talk to a friend every day, there's a streak and they feel a sense of accomplishment. And those companies have done a really great job of making people attached and committed to the platform. But not always does that cross over to the real world in terms of a value add or a value exchange or, a work and commitment. And I encourage everybody to find their own path and create their own path and find their way. I don't think you have to fall into someone else's plan. I think it's better to create your own plan. But you definitely need commitment. You have to have resolve and you have to have a vision. Every single employee has to have a vision. Like you have to ask the question, who am I? Where am I going? Who do I want to be? What do I want to achieve? Who am I becoming as a man or a woman, as a boy or a girl today? You have to think about those questions.
So you mean to say that the employees need to find their motivation?
Absolutely.
Within the organization?
Yeah, and that's a big part of leadership is like what's the driver? And here's the thing. A lot of people think they want money and salary, but it's the recognition people want. A lot of people aren't getting the validation from home. Maybe they didn't get it from their parents for whatever reason. I found that building businesses since 2010, and especially when you look at direct sales and network marketing, why they're so successful is the recognition. Massive recognition, validation. And that's what, when I work with companies now, we really focus on celebrating the wins of the team, really celebrating the wins, putting a massive emphasis on recognition. And people crave that. It's one of that hierarchy of needs, it's very important. So it's not just the financial, even though people want that. And now you're looking on Instagram, you're seeing what's possible all the time. So you want the success, but you have to have the validation as well and the recognition, I think, to really move you.
So can you tell me from your experience, you've worked with so many executives, like C-suite executives, you've worked with CEOs, from your real life experience, like how changing your mindset has helped the organization to achieve the targets or say to retain the employees?
I've seen, I'm very blessed, I have a very good client list, and I believe they come to me and they stay with me because we get results. And the reason we get results is the first thing we work on is the mindset. My brand is a bit of a Trojan horse. People think it's all about the business and high performance, but it's really about the alignment and the awareness and the clarity. Mindset is 80% of your success from everybody, from the guys doing the camera to you doing the hosting to me. It's all about our mindset first, because ultimately we do things we feel like doing. We go to the gym because we feel like going to the gym. We follow up with the customer because we feel like following up. We make those calls. We listen better when we feel like listening. We do things when we feel like it. So it's very important, to get the mindset of the leader. How do I get the staff to feel like it? How do I get the team to buy in, to want it? It's so important. So mindset's everything. So we've transformed companies just by shifting how they operate, how they communicate, their mindset, everything. It's really about who we are, their identity.
That's interesting, Aiden. So you're talking about the mindset. So I believe you mix psychology with leadership skills.
Definitely.
So how does it helps today's leaders to understand the mindset of Gen Z generation specifically to motivate them day to day?
That's a great question. What I'm telling leaders all the time is, if you want to be the leader, you don't have the luxury of minding your own business. Like, to be a leader, to be a high performer, you have to care. You have to pay attention to the details. And if you're going to take on that responsibility of hiring people and building a team, you have to really pay attention to the details. And unfortunately today, most people want to talk more than they want to listen, right? Everybody has an opinion. It's one of the world is so divided today because everybody wants to talk. Everybody has an opinion. And unfortunately, the opinions are coming out of context sometimes because depth conversations like this are being chopped up into bites, right? So, people don't want to listen, unfortunately. So I think great leadership is listening. We call it in the coaching world active listening. But to me, that's not enough. I call it listening like your life depended on it. That's the level of listening you have to have. So if you want to be a great leader, you have to listen, not just to what's being said. You have to read between the lines. You have to understand what the person is feeling, emotional intelligence. You have IQ and you have EQ. It's the emotional reading that you're looking for. Like, what are you really feeling? And some leaders say, well, I don't care what they're feeling. Well, you're not meant to be a leader then, and you're not going to be very good, because great leadership is truly paying attention to the details, reading between the lines. So that's the first step, I think, is like just being interested. And even in sales, it comes back to sales. I always tell sales teams, be interested, not interesting. Everybody wants to be interesting. They want to talk. Whereas if you talk all day, you can't hear what someone else has to say, right? So like if I keep talking, I can't hear what you have to say, and vice versa. Like, we have to be aware of that. How can we listen more, right? Like, you're listening now. When you talk, I'm listening. That's what leadership is just paying attention to those, and caring more, and vice versa then. The Gen Z staff and the workplace, they have to think, what's my leadership want? What's the company want? What's my manager want? Where are we going? What have I to listen to? So it goes both ways. And I think it's amazing when people go out and their voice has to be heard and you stand up. I think that's very important and very powerful. But it's also what gives you more power and more strength is when your stuff is taken care of, when your bed is made, when your room is organized, when your life, so we're so quick to judge. We're all guilty of judging because we're human, we're flawed, we judge. But let's take responsibility. Let's look within. And I think if we take responsibility, there's no limits for our life, what we can achieve. And I encourage Gen Z, anyone, any age, it doesn't have to be Gen Z, but especially if you're young, especially if you're under 25, you've such an opportunity. And if you take responsibility, you're going to stand out. That's the key. How do I stand out? How do I separate myself? How do I walk away from the crowd? Because if you go with the crowd, you're going to get crowd results. You have to be willing to walk your own path. And I always say entrepreneurship and being a high performer in a company is lonely, because you have to walk away from the crowd. You have to be willing to say no first. Everyone thinks, what have I got to do? Start doing. I say you have to say no first. You have to stop doing first. And that gives you space and that gives you clarity. And then you get ideas and insights, and now I take action. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But are there any practical tips one can adopt day-to-day life to have these habits in their life? Like, you've been teaching around or you've been training around so many people. So are there any daily, day-to-day activities which one can adopt to have these qualities in life?
Yeah, I don't just work with CEOs and founders. I have a business mentorship full of young entrepreneurs, actually. I have chefs and I have coaches and I have people starting different businesses of all sorts, from cars to clothes to everything. And, a lot of the stuff I'm teaching on a weekly basis in those group coachings is, again, clarity leads to confidence. The first thing is clarity, awareness. You have to ask better questions. Like, that's the first step. You have to ask those deeper questions. Who am I? Where am I going? Like, who am I really? Not who my parents told me I was, not who the world is telling me, not who my culture tells me, but who am I really? Like, what's my calling? Like, what's God's plan for me? Like, who am I really? Where am I going? Like, who am I becoming? Like, what am I working on within myself? I think today more people work on the job more than they work on themselves. And you got to work on you more. Like, that's the best work you can do, because if it's going to be, it's up to me. It's all about your mindset. It's all about your skills. I call them the skills to pay the bills. You got to be able to speak. You got to be able to sell. You got to be able to lead. How many people working on their speaking every week? I went to companies, sales professionals. How many books on sales have you read? None. How many events on selling have you gone to? None. How much work have you done on developing your speaking? None. Everything is speaking. Everything is influence. Whether the boyfriend or girlfriend you want, the job you want, the sale you want, everything comes down to your ability to move people. So first you have to get clarity. You have to get, who am I? Where am I going? What do I want? Then you have to develop your skills. And then accountability. Like, that's what people get when they come to me for coaching or mentoring. They get clarity, they get strategy, and then the accountability is huge. So I encourage people listening to find an accountability partner, either a coach or a mentor or a friend who also is visionary and wants to build something. Hold each other accountable. That's the key. because otherwise you get into avoidance behavior. You avoid what you need to do, and if we have accountability, we're more likely to get it done.
So does this comes with discipline? You need to be disciplined?
It's so funny you asked that, because I have a book coming out, right, called Back to Me, because my podcast is called Back to Me, and my coaching program is Back to Me. And I have a chapter called Awareness Over Discipline, because I think discipline is great, but it serves a point. It's not the end goal. You don't want to force yourself through life for the next 50 years. You want awareness. Awareness means knowing who you are and who you're not. Awareness means know what to say yes and what to say no. Discipline is when you're asleep. When you're asleep, you need to force yourself to do things. Whereas when you're awake, you know who you are. You know your truth. And you can say yes and no quickly. That's awareness. So I think awareness is more important than discipline. Use discipline to get to a point while you're working on the awareness, and then you have the idea is to be fully awake.
So when you talk about awareness, I think acceptance is also very important in that.
Definitely.
Even if you are aware but you do not accept it, you're not going to make a change.
Sure.
So what do you have to say on this?
Yeah, I mean, acceptance is massive. A lot of our problems stem from not liking ourselves, not loving ourselves, and we have to accept who we are, but we also have to have a vision of what we're capable of. Because, part of acceptance doesn't mean settling. I think there's a difference between accepting where you are, and that's, like, for example, I had a hip surgery a few months ago. I was injured from running. So it's been difficult, not being able to train, and then you put on weight and all these things. I have to accept that I had a surgery, and I have to rehab, and it takes time. But I also have to have vision to get back to where I want to be. Because if I accept fully without the vision, I fall, I settle down, then I get stuck because I lose momentum. It's very important to have acceptance, but to have a vision to keep you in momentum. So a vision pulls you. If you don't have a vision pulling you, you have to push yourself. That takes discipline, effort. And that's why people are miserable, because you got to push yourself. And I like pushing myself, but pushing myself towards a vision, being pulled by that. There's a big difference, than spending your life forcing yourself to do things is exhausting. Life isn't about that. Life can be magnetic if you have clarity. The clarity pulls you. The chaos and the sleep, you have to force through. That's a huge difference. If someone Gen Z got that today, it will change the next 20 years for them. There's literally billions been spent a year to keep your attention on food, media, social, everything. So how do you get away from that? Well, you have to have a vision, you have to have clarity, and you have to find your truth of who you're meant to be. If you don't, you're going to get swallowed by the world. And so many people are lost today in this. They're in this commentary. Everyone's commentating. But who's creating? You can't be commentating and creating at the same time. Because if I'm commentating, I'm judging, I'm criticizing, I'm not creative. But if I'm creative, who am I? Where can I go? What's possible? What can I achieve? Who can I be? I'm not commentating. So it's either one door or the other. And the world wants you commentating because it's all engagement. But I believe God wants you creative. That's what we're meant to be. Creating. We're meant to create. And then we are fulfilled and we're making progress. Now we're finding truth.
So was that one biggest challenge with the companies right now, which they are facing when it comes to clarity with their employees or say mindset or anything related with retaining them for a longer period of time? It's
distraction. People are distracted today. I think it's the biggest problem in the workforce today. I think it's the biggest thing. Founders, they struggle with themselves, the leaders, because they're distracted. Everybody's distracted. And there's a lack of intention, a lack of clarity, a lack of focus. And that's why when I go into a company, we get results fast because we just focus, intention, clarity. What are we letting go of? What are we focused on? It's so powerful. Like, we only have a limited amount of energy every day. And all our commentary, all our judgment, all our criticism, all our distraction takes energy. And you're wondering why you're lacking energy to go and do something. Right? So when you protect your energy and you get focused and you get intention, you keep your energy. Now you're more creative. Now you're more potent. You're stronger. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. How do I protect my energy? What does that mean? That means maybe letting go of some friendships. And I say friendships because maybe they're not your best friend. Because if they don't support you in your vision, they're not your friend. If they don't support you walking your path, it's not friends. Maybe you need to leave some WhatsApp groups. Maybe most people are in too many WhatsApp groups, distraction. Maybe you need to turn off notifications, unfollow some channels, unfollow some pages, because what you're getting is distracting you, it's not serving you. So I think today in the world, distraction and commentary is the biggest issue. Yeah, a lack of, that's why there's no clarity. So people are just busy fools.
Do you have any book to recommend?
Back to Me by Aiden O'Brien coming in November. I'd encourage everybody to check that out. I also have an ebook called The Confidence to Be Yourself. And again, I talk a lot about confidence killers, and it's on Amazon. You can get that as an ebook. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different books obviously you can get, but first thing you need to get is silence. First thing you need to get is silence, so you can start getting some answers, some clarity, insights. Our brain learns through insights. We're an antenna, we receive insights. And many years ago, my generation and older, we needed to create entertainment because all we had was silence. If you remember, I don't know how old you are, but if you remember, you had to go out and find something to do. Now you have to go out and find silence because all there is noise and entertainment. So before you had to create silence, or you had to create entertainment to get away from the silence, now we have to create silence to get away from the entertainment. So I think before you go reading a book, let's get into some silence. Go for a walk in nature. Get to talk to your higher self. Get to talk to God's plan or the universe plan or whatever you want to call it. But there is definitely insights there waiting to be received, and you can't access them because you're too busy thinking. You're too busy commentating, judging, criticizing. Get into silence. Get clarity. That's the first step. And then you'll know what to do.
Comparison also plays a big role in this, I think. People are comparing their life with others these days.
Yeah, because it's social as well, yeah.
So that's been a challenge, I believe so.
Hugely. And that's why you have to go into silence and find your way, find your path. There is a lot of comparison. We're all fall victim to it and guilty of it. But again, the awareness to catch yourself. That's why awareness is key, right? Because you catch yourself going down the spiral. And then you say, no, that's not the way. And then you feed your mind.
So Aiden, this brings me to our next segment where I'll be asking you a couple of questions and you have to reply it in one word.
Okay. I like words, as you can see, so it's going to be a challenge to get one. But
so what is the biggest Gen Z strength?
I'm not Gen Z, so I'm not sure. The biggest Gen Z strength. I think freedom is the word. Because I think they're so free to create now. I think there's endless possibilities. When I became an entrepreneur in 2010, I always say way before it was cool or sexy, which it is now. Back then it was still get a job, stay wherever. Now there's so many channels, so many opportunities to create freedom, to be independent, to find your gift, to sell online, to start your YouTube channel. I think freedom is the word for that one, because they're free to go in a million directions. Whereas before it felt like there was only a couple of directions, or one direction. So yeah, I think they're empowered as well. Empowered.
And this brings me to my next question, which is, what is that one blind spot which leaders still have?
The blind spot, again, I think clarity or lack of clarity. I think that's when I see the biggest impact I make with my clients is always the clarity piece, just like boom. So I think clarity is the key. I think people, they do what they always do, think what they always think. Getting clarity allows you to shift your perspective. Even when I sit down with someone first session, we just elevate them from where they are. They see things from a different perspective. It's like on the ground floor, you can only see some things, and you come up here in the elevator, you see more. So a shift in clarity and perspective, you see way more. There's way more exists than you think, you just can't see it. So I think clarity helps you see more.
And what is the future of workplace?
The future of the workplace in what sense? Give me a context.
In context of workforce,
Okay.
in context of the Gen Z population.
Okay, the one word is opportunity. Because I think if people follow some of the steps I shared today, if people are willing to be curious, to get into self-discovery, to be a student of themselves, to be independent, courageous, and to be committed and to stick with it, there's endless opportunity. Because I think the masses are happy in distraction or unhappy in distraction. They're going to stay there. But if you're willing to walk your own path, to think your own way, to question everything, to get creative, to stop commentating and judging, to be willing to walk your own path and to stay with it no matter how tough it gets, I think there's massive opportunity. It's exciting.
Thank you very much, Aiden, for such wonderful insights. It's such a pleasure to have you on our show.
It's a pleasure to be here. So thank you. Great questions. Really enjoyed the conversation, something different. And I really enjoyed it. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.